The darkest moments in TV history 6, Nick Crowley.
Has really shaken up this Monk's Corner neighborhood. One resident said she was too worried about her children to come out and talk with us. And Sheriff MC Cannon says right now he can't offer much comfort.
This is gonna be sad as always, but interesting.
It was March 3rd, 1989, in Berkeley County, South Carolina. 5-year-old Justin Turner leaves his home in the early morning, heading in the direction of his bus stop, where he was set to meet his neighbors. His stepmother, Megan Turner, who usually accompanied him, had been busy in the shower, while his father, Victor Turner, was off at work, leaving Justin to make this short walk alone. Later on, Megan would wait for the same bus to arrive at the end of the day, only when it did, Justin never got off. In fact, according to the bus driver and the neighbors, he never even made it on the bus in the first place. That night, Justin Turner was reported missing, and the search to find him was underway immediately. It was the third day of the search, because, March 5th, 1989.
Back in the days, 80s, 90s, that was more common to just let your child go all over the place unattended and not really actually worry about kidnapping that much. I feel like this is the era that people say, like, back in those days, you know, you weren't as scared about stranger danger. And then it's like late 90s, early 2000 that it really started becoming like a bigger thing. Myself, I went to the bus stop on my own, but I lived in like the smallest village, right? There was like 50 people in the village. But, you know, yeah, there was so many moments of like, you know, when I was young, like because I live in the countryside, maybe people were less scared, right, compared to a bigger city. But it was just okay to just go on my own. And I guess there was many times where I could have been kidnapped, you know. I was always playing outside on my own, or, you know, going to the bus stop on my own, or sometimes with my brother or something. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's really in the bigger city that you would be afraid of stuff like that.
That yielded its biggest turnout, with volunteers from the community banding together with law enforcement to help find the young boy, with the group being accompanied by a camera crew from the local Channel 2 station, as everyone shared the same hope that the child would finally be found. And so they were off, with many searchers directing their focus on the nearby woods.
Are they gonna find a body
others,
alive?
including Justin's own family, would search closer to the property as well as its neighboring land. This included rummaging around various sheds and piles of trash, as they were made to leave no stone unturned that day, with everyone geared up for a long, grueling day of searching. Though in the end, all they needed was a few minutes.
It was close. Or was it not a kidnapping then?
Something's in there.
Nathan, let's head.
No camera. Where's he at? Where's he at?
Oh man. What the fuck happened?
With the cameras rolling, we see the moment that Victor Turner discovered his own son, stuffed inside an old cabinet in his own camper, with his reaction making one thing very apparent. Justin was no longer alive.
Yeah.
The footage is devastating and made worse upon the discovery that not only was Justin dead, but he had been brutally assaulted and murdered by strangulation. But there was something even more unsettling about this footage.
I thought it was something like, I don't know, he was a little kid, he wanted to play, so he went to hide or something, he got stuck and just died there. Man, it's so fucked up. They had like a ton of people searching and it's the dad that finds it. Or what? Is the twist gonna be that it's the dad that did it? No, I don't think so.
The fact that that very camper had already been searched in the days prior, and likely numerous times, yet somehow Justin's body was never found, meaning that whoever the killer was may have hidden him there days after the disappearance.
The latest word about the boy's grim fate has really shaken up this Monk's Corner neighborhood.
They were clearly dealing with an incredibly dangerous and deranged individual, and tracking down whoever was responsible became law enforcement in the area's top priority. Though this certainly didn't mean that results were guaranteed, as there was a severe lack of physical evidence found on the scene, making it incredibly difficult to find any definitive information as to who might have done this. And despite their best efforts,
3, 2, 1, Happy New Year!
1990, the 90s.
It's 1991.
and then 2, and then 3.
Wow, that long.
Happy 2000!
Then a full decade passed.
That's crazy. I mean, if you want to scare people about stranger danger, I mean, at this point, it's like literally never leave your kid, right? Like, your kid went outside literally next to your house, he was killed. I mean, like, it wasn't even far away or he was kidnapped. It literally happened next to your house. It's crazy to think. Yeah. And obviously, you know, stranger danger is obviously like often like a very over-exaggerated thing because obviously, you know, 99% of the time, nothing happened to the kid going alone doing something, right? But at the same time, when you see something like that, it's hard not to think, yeah, man, like, might as well always be careful and paranoid of everything. You never know. That's the you never know line, yeah.
Then 2, and then 3. From the start, Justin Turner's case was ice cold. And in the end, it seemed clear that it would remain this way forever.
DNA or something?
Breaking news this afternoon out of Berkeley County as the Berkeley County Sheriff's Office has made 2 arrests in the Justin Turner case.
The Berkeley County Sheriff's Office confirms that yesterday they arrested Justin's father, Victor Lee Turner, and his stepmother, Megan Renee Turner, in the upstate, both charged with murder.
Seriously?
35 long years after Justin Turner's body was discovered, it would be the very man who found him that was charged for his murder.
And I was literally going to say, like, I'm not the best judge of if people are acting or not, but earlier I was going to say, yeah, I thought, you know, like, his grief seems real, so obviously my theory is bullshit. Man.
Along with his wife and Justin's stepmother.
But then that would explain things, maybe. The reason they didn't find him is because they hid the body somewhere else, and then on this day of search, they hid it back there to find it and act like they didn't do it.
This supposedly came as a result of improved forensic technology, as well as other information that had previously been unreported. Like one account where stepmother Megan had been overheard talking about how she and Justin had gotten into a fight that very morning, with the woman eventually laughing about it and saying, "But I won that fight." From the very beginning, Megan was always considered a suspect in this case. In fact, she'd even already been arrested for his death at one point in 1990, but was swiftly released on account of a lack of physical evidence. And this lack of physical evidence is still a factor to this day, as the recent arrest of this couple hinged mainly on circumstantial evidence, with one of the key pieces being that news footage. Investigators pointed out a number of strange moments in Victor's behaviors and actions that day when they went back and reviewed the recording, with the most glaring being that he had found his son literally seconds into the search, entering that camper and going right for the drawer that he was hidden in.
But on one hand, I guess then that makes me sus too, like, it seems so, like, stupid if he was planning this, to do it so fast, or to find the kid himself, that it almost seems like, nah, it can't be him. I don't know. But sometimes can they really prosecute anyone on just, you know, they were acting weird? Like, if they don't have physical evidence, the case is probably still just gonna be like, no one is really sure.
Almost as if he knew where to look. And given that he owned the property and he owned the camper, it makes more sense as to how Justin's body could have seemingly just appeared there, as he and his wife were the ones who had the easiest access to it. On top of this, upon finding Justin, Victor didn't rush in to check on his condition, and he seemed to just assume he was dead despite only getting a quick glance. He didn't rush to hold him, he didn't yell out to him, he just backed away and told those around him that he had found his son.
I mean, again, like, not to be an armchair psychologist, but I feel like, you know, again, it's been missing for a while, and whatever state the body is, you can probably tell. I don't know. Like, I feel like if I found a dead body, I would do this myself. This is how I would react. You know, even if it was my family, I wouldn't just go close to them. I don't know. I would first try to, like, go away to breathe or something. I don't know. People react differently. That's always why I feel like every time I see videos like this about, like, how someone acted and make them sus, I think I would be so sus, even though it would be like a genuine reaction, right? I don't know.
Shortly after, it's alleged that Victor asked the detective on the scene what would happen if a family member had done this, with this question supposedly being posed before it was even revealed that Justin had been murdered. The sheriff on the case later proclaimed about the footage. You look at it, you look at the actions, you look at the body language. I'll let the people draw their own conclusion.
I don't know, I think he was convincing to me.
That right after the body was found, Victor and Megan basically refused to ever speak to detectives again, and they never once called in to check on the case for the entire 35 years.
Okay,
with the
that's so
sheriff saying,
stoof.
"Nobody that I'm aware of from any of the family has ever heard from them again. I never got one phone call. Not one phone call from his daddy or his stepmother. What are y'all doing about my son's death? Not one. What does that tell you?"
Okay, that's...
Watching the moments that Victor found his son's body, now knowing the context, disturbing doesn't even begin to describe it. And the fact that it took 35 years for this couple to finally be placed behind bars is baffling. But things were about to get a whole lot more shocking.
Oh shit.
During our hearing, we requested that the charges against Megan and Vic be dismissed. We were very fortunate today that we got a copy of the order from the judge dismissing the charges against both Megan
Okay, that's the shocking thing. Well, I'm not that surprised then, because again, from what he was saying, like, they didn't have any real proofs. Huh? They were just like saying he acted weird, and none of that, I assume, can really be like good enough to convict people, right? So, man, I don't know what to think. I mean, like, on one hand they're sus, but yeah, on the other hand, I don't know. Like, if they were this sloppy about it, there would be more evidence to be found. I don't know.
As on June 7th, 2024, months after their arrest, Victor and Megan were released from prison and all charges against them were dropped, with the judge citing a lack of any new conclusive physical evidence, as well as the fact that nearly 20 people who were initially involved in the case, including witnesses and those who initially provided key testimony, had since perished, with the judge believing that it was now impossible to get the full story. On top of this, it was also discovered.
I mean, as always, you know, usually with older cases like this, they look more into DNA and stuff like that. But I guess there was not enough to find.
Discovered soon after the arrest, a notorious serial killer just so happened to be in the area on the day of Justin's murder.
Oh.
His name was Richard Evans, and though it's unknown how many victims he truly has, it appears that at least 4 kidnappings and 3...
My bad. My bad. Accidentally... What did I do? I don't know what I did, but that's weird.
Okay. Had since perished, with the judge believing that it truly has. It appears that at least 4 kidnappings and 3 slayings have been attributed to him, with some of these victims being taken in broad daylight when they were getting off the bus. Richard has long since passed away, and there's really no verifiable links to prove his involvement with this crime, with this potentially being just a strange coincidence, as it is worth noting that it seems like the rest of Justin's family still believe that Victor and Megan had killed him. But all of this left the case in a position that the judge felt was unsolvable, leaving the case without conclusion and without justice.
I mean, it's easy to be angry and be like, yeah, send them to prison, but like, it really doesn't seem like there's enough. Huh? There's just not enough to really like definitively be sure, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of such thing, I won't deny it, but at the same time, I don't know.
Meaning that in this footage, we may never truly know if Victor had just discovered his son, or his victim.
I don't know. His reaction is convincing, but that doesn't mean anything. I'm not a great people reader, right? So. Ah, that's sad. That's fucking sad. Sad case. Rest in peace to the kid.
Recently I discovered something truly distressing. I was being double charged for Netflix.
I was
gonna
say this is definitely an ad
that I didn't even realize was still active for well over a year, and I only found out thanks to today's sponsor, Rocket Money. Rocket Money has helped save its customers up to $740 a year when you use all of the app's premium features. They've also helped save their customers over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. Rocket Money is an all-in-one personal finance app that helps you track your subscriptions,
you must have a lot of money if you don't notice if you're being charged for something.
Your money better. It's incredibly easy to use and consolidates all of your reoccurring bills from all of your separate accounts into one easily digestible dashboard, which is huge considering that literally everything now requires a subscription. And best of all, with Rocket Money, you can cancel your subscriptions right from the app, which saves so much time and stress. I immediately made use of this, and it helped me realize that one of the stock footage sites that I've been using for years had actually doubled its rate out of nowhere. In addition, I found a bunch of other stuff that I was paying for that I realized I just didn't really use anymore, or just wasn't worth the price. And within just an hour of using the app, I
mean, again, you know, as someone with never has money, like, you literally look at every single charge and you notice every single price increase. I mean, I can't imagine for like even months paying for something that I don't know what it is or I didn't realize. But again, when you have a lot of money, I guess like $5 or $10 there isn't noticeable, yeah. But when you don't, like, you're always checking and seeing.
It already saved over $100. I highly recommend this service, especially to those wanting to take control of their finances. So go to rocketmoney.com/Crowley or use that link in the description to get started today for free.
Fair enough. Thanks, Mr. Sponsor.
George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, were going on a camping trip. This is a beautiful spot to set up camp, George. George turned around and saw
this is like
scary.
Not even 144p.
It was a thin trail of smoke.
There seems to be something innately interesting about survival shows. For decades, audiences have been enamored by depictions of people pushing themselves to the limit in order to survive harsh and almost inhumane conditions. Most notably, and one of the more tame examples, is Survivor, which no doubt popularized the genre, as it isn't just a staple of television in the US, but all the other countries that have since created their own versions of the show. In France,
we have... okay. Koh-Lanta, I was actually about to talk about it. We have Koh-Lanta. It's something that I've watched a bit when I was younger. I think it's still going to this day. It's been going on for like 20 or 30 years. It's kind of boring. Like, you have a group of people. I mean, like, one season might be fun, but I remember it not being that interesting. Like, a lot of, you know, it's a lot of dumb drama of like, you didn't catch any fish, I catch some fish. And then, at the end of like some week or some days or something, they have like a meeting where they decide who to eliminate. And so they're eliminating people one by one. In concept it's good, but frankly, like, from what I remember, it wasn't like, it didn't feel that interesting survival, right? It was always like the same thing. There's some little challenge or something to make it different, but it was never that interesting. And I guess the other show like that I've watched was Man vs. Wild, but you know, it was good for like tips, even though I'm sure not all of them were good, but from what has come out, it was mostly fake, right? Like, as you'd expect. Like, there's a lot of YouTube series like that, though, of people doing, like, actual, like, survival in the wild and stuff like that.
The show is called Koh-Lanta and was created back in 2001 by the company Adventure Line Productions, or ALP for short. And by the year 2015, the show was one of the most popular in its market, having seen 13 successful seasons. And so, riding the high of this impressive feat, ALP decided to try their hand at a new show, one that was far more daring.
Hur fasen ska detta gå?
No food. No map. No help. Dropped.
The show was called...
I'm guessing someone dies is probably why this is on this video.
Dropped, and would follow 2 teams of 4 contestants who would be blindfolded and dropped into an undisclosed location each week via helicopter, with each team having the same mission: make it to civilization, charge a phone, and make a rescue call. And the first team to do so would win, while the losing party would have to vote one member off. It was a fairly interesting idea, but it also already had a proof of concept, as there was actually an identical show being made in Sweden at the time that was already well received. Though Dropped wanted to turn up the interest even more, and that's exactly what they did when they announced that the cast would be composed solely of famous athletes, most of whom turned out to be French Olympians who were already well beloved in the country. It had all the makings of a certain success, though in the end, this show would never actually make it to television, with the showrunners proclaiming that the program would not see the light of day.
Someone
and this was
died,
all thanks to the events of March 9th, 2015. It was the start of their second episode. The first had seen the elimination of professional footballer Sylvian Wiltord after his team failed to make it out of the wilderness first, which left 7 contestants who were now ready for round 2. The day's shoot began in La Rioja, Argentina, with the cast being blindfolded in preparation to be loaded up into their helicopters and dropped at their next location. Olympic gold medal swimmer Alan Bernard was one of the first to step onto the craft, but was quickly told to exit, as his team had been the first to be dropped in the last episode, meaning that to make it fair, it was time for the other group to go first, thus giving them slightly more time. And so he stepped off the craft and waited with his group, as the other team instead loaded in. There were 2 helicopters on the scene. One was set to carry 3 contestants: Florence Atu,
helicopter crash.
Samir Mouffe,
they come to the line and move.
Camille Mouffa. I think that's probably his read.
Bay touches and just gets there.
And Alexis Fastine, along with a crew member and 1 pilot. Meanwhile, the other craft was strictly for the crew, holding 4 production workers as well as a single pilot, with Alan Bernard and his group staying on the ground with their backs turned to the craft, as they eagerly anticipated the return of those helicopters to then take them. And so, with their blindfolds on in the pitch darkness, the team listened, as they heard the sounds of the crew cheering on a successful takeoff, though the cheering would be cut short by an awful sound.
Helicopter
the sound
crash.
of crushing metal.
Damn.
The aftermath was recorded on the cell phone of someone standing nearby, showing us a large group of people rushing towards a massive plume of smoke.
Man, helicopter, planes, scary stuff. Seriously.
Where they would find the remains of one of the aircrafts, mangled and reduced to an unrecognizable mass of steel, with none of the contestants being able to make sense of what had just happened. It's very possible that the incident itself was captured by the production's own cameras. However, this footage has never and likely will never be released. Though coincidentally, they weren't the only ones recording. As someone watching nearby just so happened to be filming the takeoff of the
I was gonna say, was it a helicopter collision? Is that what happened?
Two crafts, showing us the reality of what had just transpired.
They're close. Wait, both of them went down?
Just as the two...
Man, how does that happen? Like, fucking hell. It's insane, I mean. The sky is so vast. It really shows, like, there's something about it, like, where people, you know, like, people often say with car crash that just people are, like, there's some kind of, like, weird attraction of crashing. But I guess it goes for, like, the sky as well. With all the space, there's often, like, mid-air collision like that.
The aircrafts had taken to the sky. The second and lowest helicopter began rapidly ascending, with the pilot seemingly failing to realize that the other craft was directly above them, causing the two to collide, and then plummet to the ground below.
I guess one of them can't see under him, one of them can't see over him. I guess so.
In the end, 10 people went into the sky, and none made it down alive.
Damn, that's so sad.
The footage makes little sense even today. The weather was perfect, the crafts were some of the best in the world, and both of the pilots not only had 30+ years of flying experience, but they were both flight instructors themselves. Not to mention that the show's security coordinator, who was in charge of facilitating the takeoff, had actually worked on the Swedish version of the show and had ample experience in this exact situation. And yet, this is how it ended.
Big accident?
It was eventually determined that the higher helicopter was likely flying out of visual contact from the lower helicopter, and that the pilot of the ascending chopper likely just didn't realize how close they were, with reports also indicating that he may have been distracted by the actual filming process, something we've tragically seen before.
I was literally gonna say, like, this is the one I remember. US news thing, whatever, following, like, some guy running in a car, and then I think two helicopters run into each other.
We don't know what has just happened right there.
And because of this, it appeared that at least some pilot error was to blame. But it was AOP that was found largely responsible, with alleged serious safety oversights being discovered later on, with it appearing that this crash was the result of multiple small factors coming together to form one catastrophic accident. After the incident, Dropped was swiftly cancelled, while the team that had so narrowly avoided getting on that flight and in turn likely having perished themselves were left in complete and utter shock, forever changed by the accident. With Alan Bernard, the man that's said to have been physically on that doomed craft for a split second, later recounting that there was a life before and after Dropped, because you don't come out of such an accident unscathed. In the end, AOP was indicted on...
Easy to understand that, right? Like, you know, how close you were to dying, and also the fact that, like, so many others died when you didn't. The survival guilt.
Manslaughter charges, and found to be an inexcusable fault for the disaster, though it doesn't really seem like they faced any...
Fort Boyard is also like a kind of like Koh-Lanta, a very popular, like, French, you know, reality show, I guess. It's on, like, this island thing, and there's a bunch of challenge to get, you know, to get money and stuff like that, I think, for charities.
Sort of actual legal punishment, with the company continuing their work on other programs to this day. But one thing that I was surprised to find in my research was that AOP is actually no stranger to the world of disturbing television moments. In fact, they had experienced one just a single year before this accident.
Okay.
As mentioned previously, AOP was already quite versed in the world of survival television, as they had run 13 successful seasons of Koh-Lanta. Though what I failed to mention is that the company had actually produced 14 seasons, or at least they attempted to.
one of
It
them,
was season 13
someone died.
during the very first day of filming when contestant Jara Baban collapsed after the show's second challenge, with the show continuing to film as if nothing happened. Anonymous reports from the set claim that once on the ground, it took the medical team nearly 5 minutes before intervening as to not interrupt the recording, and once they eventually did tend to him, he became more alert and complained of having severe cramps. But the show's primary doctor, Terry Costa, didn't believe that his ailments required an emergency airlift, as this would have cost the production company far too much money, especially on the first day of filming. Instead, Jara was diagnosed with dehydration and was brought back to their makeshift infirmary, where he would lay for nearly 2 full hours until he was finally taken away by a proper medical team.
And he's dead.
On his way off the island, Jara Baban would pass away from cardiac arrest at the age of just 25. Cardiac arrest that was completely missed by the show's doctors. The testimony from those on the scene painted ALP and Dr. Costa in an extremely negative light, as their inability to act quickly and recognize the ailments of Baban likely contributed to the young man losing his life, with some claiming that the doctor and the showrunners were far more interested in keeping the production running smoothly than actually caring for the young man.
Seems
and though
like
ALP denied any wrongdoing, the season would essentially be cancelled right there on the spot. But disturbingly, despite the filming lasting only 1 day, Baban's death wasn't the only tragedy to occur as a result.
Really?
Due
Doctor
to intense
kills
public
himself.
ridicule, Dr. Terry Costa would end his life just days later, stating that all the negative news reports about him were wrong and that they had sullied his good name, writing in a final note, "I'm sure that I treated Jara in a respectable manner, as a patient and not as a contestant," adding, "Having to reconstruct this destroyed reputation would be unbearable."
I mean, we don't know the truth, right? Like, maybe, he genuinely, didn't notice, which, would make him, a bad doctor, but yeah, maybe it wasn't out of, trying to save money, or maybe it was, but it wasn't him. It was the producers or something who made the decision. I mean, I don't know the true story. It's fucked up. Someone died and someone killed themselves, I mean. All of our money, right?
Before ending his letter with a message to those on the shoot that had spoken out against him, the author of the anonymous comments about the circumstances of Jara Baban's death and those who spread them will have to face their conscience. In the end, Kolata would return a year later and has been going strong ever since, as ALP did not appear to face any serious repercussions for the incidents that transpired under their watch, with their fault in both cases being debated to this day.
Which then makes you think maybe last time I watched something like Koh-Lanta was probably 2012 or 13, and I never watched the full show, just on one episode, but maybe why it was so boring is because they're really afraid of death or something like that, and more controversies. If this was before, when I was watching. Sad. Very sad. I still can't believe the helicopter incident though. That's crazy. Aqui agora.
Emergência 91, a vida como ela é na tela do SBT.
Okay.
It's July 5th, 1993, in downtown Sao Paulo, Brazil. A doorman working at a busy office building looks up to the sky and notices a woman sitting on top of the structure, her legs dangling 7 stories above the pavement below. One wrong move away from certain death. Precisely what she wanted. The man calls the police immediately, though surprisingly, they wouldn't be the first on the scene, and instead, they were beaten by a camera crew.
Okay.
The group was from the show Aqui Agora, a news program from the network SBT that had become notorious for their sensationalized and shocking stories. In their history, they had captured live footage of police riots, kidnappings, and even murders, which they would then broadcast on air as part of their show. And this unfolding situation was their content for the day.
Don't fucking tell me they're gonna try to talk to the suicidal person and just make it worse and they actually kill themselves. Man, it reminds me, I think it was another video from Nick Crowley about a Brazil case of a bunch of girls being kept in by some guy with a gun, and the media kept trying to push. They would call the guy, they would be on the scene filming and broadcasting the police plans and everything, and they literally made it worse and one of the girls died. Man, I mean, frankly, it's not just Brazil, right? I'm sure there's cases like that all over the world. The media has this thing of being portrayed as bloodthirsty, insects, and that's really what it is. I mean, in some of them, it really feels like that, as it's people often call some YouTuber they have this content brain rot, where, you know, they do whatever fucked up shit for content, right? And it's true. But, you know, TV has been doing that before, right? With reality TV, with the media, right? Like, as long as they will get people watching, they will do it. YouTube is really not different, huh?
Nós fomos ver o que estava acontecendo. E quando nós chegamos ao local, o corpo de bombeiros chegou, os bombeiros chegaram junto conosco. O que é um suicídio? Onde? Nós vimos junto. Um bombeiro olhou para cima, estava lá a menina, sentada no parapeito. E eu tomei um susto, a câmera olhou também, nós tomamos um susto.
You freaked out, but you started filming someone about to kill themselves.
Her name was Daniele Alves, and at the age of just 16, she had entered that office building and climbed up to its roof with the hopes of ending her life. And minutes after Aki Agora arrived, she did just that, as the cameras captured it all.
É terrível. Daqui a pouco aqui.
So it's not really like they didn't, I guess they weren't directly involved, but still, why would you film that? I mean, of all seeing, I mean, how can you have such little respect? I mean, like, even if it ended well, right, you could have filmed like an heroic firefighter saving someone from killing themselves, sure, but even then, the fact that you had no idea what would happen, like, come on.
Agora vai mostrar as imagens chocantes de uma jovem pulando para a morte. Atenção, são imagens exclusivas que não recomendamos para crianças nem para pessoas.
Motherfucker is talking like he's presenting a sports show.
Later that night, that footage would be packaged together into a roughly 10-minute segment, which the network promoted heavily throughout the day, hyping it up to be one of their most shocking episodes ever. And supposedly, it was. As though it appears that the full segment is currently lost, the footage of Daniele's fall was said to have been displayed almost entirely in full, showing the moments just before and just after she had landed, where she was said to be still somewhat alive.
Man.
It was more than shocking, and left viewers outraged that something of this nature could be shown on TV. But while showing the footage proved highly controversial enough, it was the context surrounding the footage that made it even more depraved.
Yeah.
As mentioned previously, police were called to the scene to assist in efforts to help Daniele Alves. Yet the first to arrive was that Aki Agora news crew. And this wasn't a coincidence. They were all about capturing events as they unfolded. And in order to be the first on the scene, they actually tapped into the police scanners, monitoring all of the calls and information being passed through officers in order to get leads on potential stories.
I feel like there's a great movie about this concept. I totally forgot about it, but I just remembered with this. I think it's called Nightcrawlers. I think that's what it was called. It's a great movie about like with a great actor, which I forgot the name of. But yeah, about like some kind of bloodthirsty reporter who always tries to be there on, you know, the scene of like fucked up stuff happening, and he has this macabre fascination with death. It's a really good movie.
Which is how they got word of this incident, hearing the calls and speeding over as quickly as possible. It wasn't illegal per se, but it surely wasn't ethical either. And this was only the start. After Daniele jumped, the crew that had filmed her had already captured their dramatic footage for the day, and as the officers and medical personnel dealt with the aftermath, the crew decided to turn their focus to the next element of their story: Daniele's parents.
Of course.
They packed up their equipment right away and headed straight.
Wait, so you're telling me? Oh my god. They went to the parents before they were ever informed. How can you even do that? I mean, how can you call yourself a human being doing that? Like, man.
Right for the home of Daniele's mother and father, with it being unclear how they even got that address in the first place. And there, they once again had beaten the police, who were still back at the scene trying to piece everything together. Though rather than waiting for them, the crew instead decided to take the lead, going up to the door, ringing the doorbell, and telling Daniele's parents that their daughter had just passed away. The crew then supposedly took the parents to the police station, consoling them all while their cameras kept rolling.
I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't want to say I'm shocked, but man, am I appalled. Good evening, Adrian.
As the crying parents made for the perfect footage for their segment. Exploitative is the only word for it. I don't want to see it, but what they did next, well, that was something far more evil.
Next.
Having dropped the parents off at the police station, the crew then got to work creating their segment for the night. And as part of this, they needed to find a reason as to why Daniele did this. They first theorized that this was likely due to a drug addiction which had somehow spiraled and led to her jumping. But then they decided that just wasn't dramatic enough.
You know fucking nothing.
And they instead shifted to a different story, one that they reported to all of their viewers as if it were a fact. They reported that Danielle Alves had ended her own life because of her abusive parents, placing the entire blame on the family that they had just supposedly helped. And there was one massive issue with this. It wasn't even true.
I mean,
the claim appears to have been quite literally based on nothing. It has no verifiable backing and seems to have been a complete guess. In fact, just days later, Daniele's best friend spoke out and said that
Is that really, like, can you really do that? I mean, I know we all know the news is often bullshit and they often do stuff like that, huh? Reporting information that are totally not true, right? Huh? That's pretty common. But, you know, I know there's often a joke of like, if you say allegedly it's fine, right? You won't get in trouble with the law. And I'm sure the media does that a lot. Huh? But to this level, like, come on. Like, you know, as the media, with a massive audience, spreading what's supposed to be news, so responsibility for, you know, truth, or at least not like, or caring about, you know, the people you might hurt by reporting totally wrong stuff. Huh? Tell me they got prosecuted for this.
Danielle had done this because of a broken heart, not because of drugs or any sort of abuse. It's sickening, as the crew cared so little about Daniele's own story that they seemingly just made up their own. And imagine for a moment being those parents, going about your day when a TV crew comes to your house and tells you that your daughter is dead. And despite consoling you, those same people then broadcast your daughter's death for the whole world to see and blame you for it. Naturally, this didn't go without repercussions for Akiagara, who had crossed the line in the most soulless way possible. And the effects were swift and powerful.
Good.
As the rating soared 33%, making it more popular than ever before.
Okay. I'm not surprised.
The network would end up being sued by Daniele's family, who was eventually awarded $1 million as a result. But realistically, no amount of money could ever be enough.
That doesn't really fix anything.
Permanently affected that family and destroyed their grieving process in a way that I can't even wrap my mind around. But this did little to slow down Akiagara, as they remained on the air for 4 more long years, during which they leaned even more into these unfolding crime stories, leading to them witnessing numerous other deaths, and even being taken hostage themselves on multiple occasions. Akiagara would continue on air until the year 1997, when one day the show was pulled due to its...
Again, like people say, you know, this generation is so cooked. Like the internet, YouTube has ruined people, but what's the difference? Like, as soon as TV became a thing, clearly people were doing this. Like, becoming absolute vulture for content. I mean, this is so insane.
Declining ratings, and in its place, the network would instead begin airing The Disney Club.
Madness.
You look down the track and there is a train coming toward you.
What a sad story.
What do you think would happen?
It was an exciting day for the crew of the upcoming movie Midnight Rider, the Greg Allman story. Years had been spent planning and scripting for this biographical film about Greg Allman of the Allman Brothers.
Not about a film.
And this day, February 20th, 2016, would be the day that they would finally start filming. It was nothing more than a camera test, a day in which the crew would practice filming, as well as getting acquainted to their equipment and new co-workers. But for the group of 20, the excitement in the air was palpable, as they were given access to a stunning piece of land in Nahunta, Georgia. So stunning, in fact, that the film's director, Randall Miller, just couldn't wait to begin the actual process of filming. Slicing through the property was an old railroad that had crossed over a scenic bridge raised high above the Altamaha River. The perfect location for a shot that Miller had been envisioning.
It looks nice, yeah.
It was set to be a dream sequence where Allman's character would wake up on a hospital bed in the middle of the tracks and see a vision of his brother. And it was a shot that Miller just had to have. However, there was one major issue.
There's a train.
The crew was given permission to film on the property, but not the actual railway, as this was owned by a separate company named CSX. And when Miller asked them for permission to film the shot, he was denied multiple times, as these tracks were still very active, making it far too dangerous.
So they did guerrilla and someone died because of it. I know, I was watching once stuff about like movies, and it's actually not that rare. Like, they would often, you know, if they don't get permission for something, try to do it guerrilla. But on a fucking train tracks.
But being on location and seeing that bridge, Miller couldn't help himself. And so he directed his crew to set up the scene anyway, believing that they could quickly steal a shot without anyone noticing. Miller had supposedly done his research too, and discovered that only 2 trains were set to roll through the area that day, and he knew the general intervals in which they were supposed to pass. Based on this, he figured that those trains wouldn't arrive for a few hours, giving them more than enough time to film the movie's very first scene. And so they quickly set everything up, rolling out a metal hospital bed and placing it towards the center of the bridge, with Miller assuring his crew that this was in fact safe, and that they had nothing to worry about, as the camera began to roll. Minutes later, the bed began to shake, and the silence around them was shattered by the sound of a whistle.
I don't know what to say, I mean, Darwin Award over here.
Before them was an unexpected 3rd train, heading straight for the bridge that the entire crew was now on. Miller had
done his research.
At this point, the crew was filming a considerable distance into the bridge, but the shortest and really only route to safety was to go towards the oncoming train, and so that's precisely the route they took. And as they did so, there was little panic within the group, as rather than rushing to safety, they all seemed more focused on retrieving their equipment, believing that they had more than enough time to salvage everything. As after all, losing this expensive equipment on day 1 would have been devastating for the production. They likely had no idea that from the sound of that first whistle, they had just 60 seconds until the train would crash.
Man, I don't understand. There's so many videos like this and, you know, stuff like this about trains. Like, people don't seem to, like, respect the speeds at which a train is going, and just how, yeah, like how fast it will be on you. I mean, man, it's really not that hard. Just don't go on fucking train tracks. I mean, I don't know.
Across that bridge.
It's not that hard.
Whether they were off it or not. As they began to realize just how quickly the train was approaching, their movements became more hurried, which is where one major problem occurred.
They got stuck.
That metal hospital bed. It was incredibly heavy on its own, and though it was designed to roll, its wheels kept getting caught on the tracks. And worst of all, it was set up horizontally, which essentially turned it into a barricade. And despite their best
how many died?
efforts to save everything, their time was up, and as the camera continued rolling, the train would arrive.
Fuck, it's way too close. Man, like, looking at this footage is insane. Like, you can see it coming in distance and they're trying to leave so slowly, I mean. Like, there's no survival instinct. Oh fuck, they're dead. There's no time. I would just jump in the water.
At this moment, the train itself also had a camera rolling, which showed that even in those final moments, the crew was still trying to salvage their equipment.
Yeah, I can't
What
see
happened
much
next
though.
was a blur. Some were able to leap to safety, while others managed to jump to the side and cling onto the bridge. But there was still one thing that remained in the train's path.
The bed is the... Did they actually get out of the way, but the bed is gonna kill someone?
That hospital bed, which upon impact was torn to pieces. Pieces that were flung all over the area, striking multiple crew members and leaving many injured.
That's what I
It was
thought.
27-year-old filming assistant Sarah Jones, who was struck by the largest fragment, with a force so strong that it caused her to fall directly in front of the train. In total, 7 crew members were hurt but alive, while Sarah Jones had tragically been killed.
There's two sides to this. On one hand, like, obviously, you know, all of the people there being this stupid, the director being this stupid, like, there's some responsibility. And obviously, you know, like, no one deserves to die like that, even for being stupid. But it's like, yeah, like, they were all stupid for being there. That's all I can think of, right? I mean, I guess you can say maybe she was an assistant or whatever, so she was pressured there. I guess there's that. But, man, it's so avoidable. Such an avoidable death.
On the very first day of production, in the very first shot, the unthinkable had happened. And when it came to passing the blame, most turned their attention to Randall Miller, as he was the one who ordered the scene to be shot despite being denied permission numerous times.
I guess that makes sense,
And this public
yeah.
disdain towards him only grew, as he and his production company denied any responsibility, and instead, they blamed.
There's no way you can deny responsibility. You didn't have permission. You're on fucking train tracks.
Blamed the railway company.
Of course.
Just
They
1
sent a
week
train
after
to
the
kill you.
incident, Randall Miller requested a new permit to begin filming Knight Rider once again, asking if they can begin as soon as possible.
Fuck off.
This, however, would never actually happen.
Send this guy to prison.
As he was instead arrested and given a 1-year prison sentence for manslaughter, as well as a
1
10-year
year.
ban from directing any films, a mandate that he would actually go on to break, though he was swiftly forgiven, and today he continues to direct. But while it's easy to focus on the morbid nature of this case and the man responsible for it, there was one unexpected outcome of this horrific accident.
Man.
Upon her passing, Sarah Jones' parents set up a foundation called Safety for Sarah, which pushed for safer working conditions on film sets, with a movement bringing to light a number of safety concerns that were often brushed aside and ignored.
That's good.
And all in all, their efforts have made TV and film sets significantly safer, giving their daughter a purpose even after her death.
As always, as fucked up as it is to say, and, you know, most change for better come in blood, right? Try this story for like big things and smaller things. It's always like that. Until someone dies, people will always be stupid.
On top of this, Sarah Jones was also honored by countless production companies across the world, as crews began writing her name on their film slates, with there ultimately being over 2,000 of these tributes for her, from some of the world's most well-known productions. But by far the biggest tribute was when she was honored at that year's Academy Awards ceremony, a stage that she always dreamed of making it to.
When you saw her name up on the screen at the Academy Awards, what were your feelings?
Alec Baldwin. Yeah, I had that one.
She made it to the Academy. She made it.
I've heard that one. Ah, man. The end. Depressing, but always such interesting videos. I mean, that's all I can say. Like, it's depressing, but it's so interesting. You know, like, it's morbid curiosity, this video, but at the same time, I do really find them interesting and kind of important to watch, I guess. Yeah. Alright, good one, but man, sad one. Every case was just sad. Super sad cases.